So welcome to everybody. As you all know, we are here to go over the sadhana, the practice of green Tara. And the one we're going to be going over this evening is the one that is done at KCC on, Tuesday nights. Which Tuesday nights? The second and fourth Tuesday nights. This is the green Tara practice that is done in many to most of the Karmakagyu monasteries, usually done in the morning. It's the same Tara practice that the retreatants at SCOL did each morning of their retreat. And at the end, for those of you who attended the green Tara initiation that Khenpo Rinpoche gave here, 1 or 2 Tuesdays ago, there's a small booklet that was passed out for that. And if there's time at the end, we'll have a brief look at that. But actually, by going over this longer practice, everything contained in that shorter practice, by going over the longer practice, we will cover everything that is contained in the shorter practice. So we don't have time to actually do the practice and go over the details of the practice. So it seemed to me that it would be more beneficial to go over the stages of the practice in our time tonight. And that way, I felt like that would be better preparation for people to begin coming to the sits that happen here on a regular basis. And then maybe in the future, we can meet again to go over some more details. So we're going to go over it from beginning to end, but for now, why doesn't everybody turn to page 3? Because as good Buddhists, you know that we always begin our practice or a session of teaching and listening with refuge and bodhicitta. What makes one Buddhist or not is whether or not we have received refuge, whether we go for refuge. And all Buddhist practices are preceded by it. And along with that, we generate bodhicitta. Refuge is the border or the dividing line between something that is Buddhist and not, and bodhicitta is what makes any practice that we do a practice of the Mahayana. So looking at page 3, the second line where it says Namo. Namo means homage. Directly underneath that it says I and all sentient beings. Does everybody see that? Oh. Why not? Are there 2 page 3s? Okay. Keep turning till you come to a second page 3. This is the first secret transmission. Has anybody not found the second page 3? If you look on the left-hand side of the pages, they say prayers to Guru Rinpoche. You need to keep turning past all those prayers to Guru Rinpoche till on the left-hand side of your text you see green Tara. Oh boy, do we have different texts? Raise your hand if you haven't found it yet. So Julie, can you help Susan? Peggy, can you help Taman? Taman has a different version. Julie, can you grab a text and hand it to Taman? You can borrow this for tonight, Taman. It'll be better if you follow the... Well, there are different centers that produce different texts. It's a fine text. It's better if we all look at the same version. Is there anybody that still hasn't found it? Okay. So what we'll do here and what we do during the practice, when we recite the verses for refuge and bodhicitta, depending on what practice we're doing, we visualize different things. So for those of you familiar with the preliminary practices to Mahamudra, there's an elaborate field of refuge. You have what we call the 3 jewels and the 3 roots. So the 3 jewels being the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Then we have representations of the 3 roots particular to the Vajrayana, meaning the gurus, the yidams, and the dakinis and dharma protectors. But here it's quite simple. Here we imagine that in the sky in front of us is green Tara. Is she here with us somewhere? Right there. And we imagine that green Tara is the embodiment of all the 3 jewels and all the 3 roots. So she is the essence of all the gurus, the essence of all the yidams, the essence of all the dakinis and protectors, and she is the essence of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So with this image before us, and whenever we visualize, we'll go over this a bit later, but the image should be clear. It should be apparent, but never solid. It should always have this sense of being made of light, appearing but insubstantial, but alive, yeah? So this is an important piece. Our visualizations shouldn't be like photos, snapshots still. There should be some life to them. Yeah, the silk's kind of billowing or something. A sense of liveliness in the features and the form. So thinking that Tara is in the space before us as the embodiment of all the 3 jewels and the 3 roots, we'll recite these verses 3 times and maybe quickly just to read it through in English. Namo. I and all sentient, just me first, I'll see if there's anything to explain. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Venerable Lady. So, Jetsunma. Jetsunma's difficult to translate. Some people just say Jetsunma. Venerable Lady's close enough. The complete embodiment of the 3 jewels. So there we go. We have it in black and white. Having generated, and so that's refuge, right? I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Venerable Lady, the complete embodiment of the 3 jewels. Then we generate the attitude of aspiration bodhicitta being the wish to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So when we say aspiration bodhicitta, that's what we mean. I wish to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, and then in order to do so, we have application bodhicitta, which means what are we going to do to actually attain that realization? I will now enter into the profound path. And the profound path is this very practice of Tara. So why don't we do this 3 times together to begin our session of explanation and listening. And the Namo we'll do just for the first time. Namo. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Venerable Lady, the complete embodiment of the 3 jewels. Having generated the attitude of aspiration bodhicitta, I will enter into the profound path. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Venerable Lady, the complete embodiment of the 3 jewels. Having generated the attitude of aspiration bodhicitta, I will enter into the profound path. I and all sentient beings take refuge in the Venerable Lady, the complete embodiment of the 3 jewels. Having generated the attitude of aspiration bodhicitta, I will enter into the profound path. And even though we've said the words and we say that that constitutes going for, actually we don't exactly say that constitutes going for refuge in bodhicitta, it's important that we actually, it doesn't matter what we say, it doesn't matter if we say nothing at all, we could say something totally different, but as long as in our minds we think, I'm going for refuge, meaning we have come to realize that our ordinary ways of searching for happiness and benefit can't bear the lasting happiness and benefit that we seek. So we're turning our minds from these ordinary things in which we search for this happiness and well-being to that which can actually provide for true lasting happiness, which isn't contingent upon causes and conditions, which leads us to the realization of our own awakened nature. And that is turning to the three jewels of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as well as in this case, Tara. And we should now think that it's very rare to have the opportunity to even engage in these teachings and receiving these teachings and doing this practice. And we do so with the wish to attain Buddhahood, and not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings. Aspiration bodhicitta always has those two components. It has to include the wish to attain complete Buddhahood, and it has to be for the benefit of all sentient beings. And then again, as I just said previously, what we're going to do to bring this aspiration to attain Buddhahood about is embarking on, not necessarily the practice tonight, but listening to and gaining an understanding of these teachings, so maybe we can reflect on that for just a moment. These two pieces, both refuge and bodhicitta. When we first approach a practice with which we're not familiar, it's quite daunting. The Tibetan texts aren't laid out with headings and subheadings. It's kind of easy to lose track of where you are, what you're doing at any particular time in a practice like this. So I've created this overview. This handout. Does anybody not have the handout? They're on the table in the back. Oh, we're out? Where's Linda? Is Linda not here? Linda Grove? Oh. Who still doesn't have? Raise your hand if you don't. Oh, here come more. Here come more. The reinforcements are here. Yeah, raise your hand if you don't have one. Anthony's not raising his hand, but I don't think he has one. So, who here has done or heard of the 7-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche, done at the end of Chenrezi sometimes? Anyone familiar with refuge and bodhicitta? Anyone heard of the accumulation of merit? Anybody familiar with the concept of making offerings? How about the mandala offering? Anyone heard of the mandala offering? In Yidam practices, we visualize ourself in the form of what we call a Yidam. Anyone ever done that? Who's not done a Yidam practice, like visualizing yourself as Chenrezi or something else? And sometimes this visualization is a self-visualization, and sometimes it's a front visualization, yeah? And then we have this concept of praises in the Dharma, extolling the qualities of the Yidam in question, or the Lama, or the Buddhas in question. And then mantra. Anyone ever done mantra practice? Om Mani Padme Hum, anything like that? This is maybe new for some people. There's something called a Torma offering. Torma offering is really just another kind of offering, more or less edible in nature, but not made of ordinary substances. So that's maybe a little new in this practice. And then after that we have dedication. Anybody know dedication? Okay, so good. So the point is, as I'm sure you're well aware, the practice contains things that you know. And it's my sense and it's my experience that if we can see the practice laid out in somewhat of an outline form, it demystifies the practice and gives us a little more confidence in engaging in the practice. So that's what I want. That's all I hope to accomplish tonight, actually. We're not going to go over the different tunes that are done with this practice. However, we have a recording of the chant master from Mirik Monastery doing this practice. It's just him and a couple other monks. And they're not doing it with the full band of instruments that sometimes accompanies the practice, so it's quite easy to hear. It's quite clear. And we're going to make that available for all of you to listen to if you'd like to at home. It can be really helpful to learn the tunes on your own a little bit before you come together as a group. And the thing is, the practice is done in different ways in different places, right? So the tradition done like at Sonada Monastery, Kala Rinpoche's monastery, is a little different than the tradition of Bokar Monastery. But since these days, there's a strong connection with Bokar Monastery and Khenpo Rinpoche and Yangtze Rinpoche, and since Umzu Chupo also comes to the States from time to time, to this center from time to time, the thinking is that it would be good to practice, for everyone to practice under one tradition, you know, so that when Khenpo Rinpoche comes, and the future of Yangtze Bokar Rinpoche comes, with Homze Umze Chupo comes, we can do the practice with them in a way that they are familiar and it will feel like home to them, you know. I think they will have appreciation for the effort that this center has put into that. The rub is, it's slightly different than probably the way that Julie has been leading people here. And it's probably slightly different than the people who just came out of 3-year retreat at Goldendale were doing it. But that's okay. That's okay. And more will be said about that in the future. We're not going to worry too much about that tonight. And just one last thing before we begin. Did not expect that. This practice was very close to the heart of Bokar Rinpoche, and continues to be very close to the heart of Khenpo Rinpoche. Bokar Monastery sort of flourished to a degree that many people in India, the Himalayan region, were sort of mystified by. Bokar Rinpoche wasn't an extremely high tukul. He didn't travel a lot. He didn't fundraise even when he did travel. Yet all of a sudden, Bokar Monastery has a new retreat center, and Bokar Monastery has a brand new monastery. Bokar Monastery has a new shedra. Bokar Monastery has new stupas, you know. And Rinpoche would often say, all these things are the blessings of Mother Tara. Rinpoche was very clear with his students. He said, I have never asked people for money. If people come and they appreciate what they do and they make an offering and put it on our table, we say, okay, we're going to use it as the best we can to further the Dharma. And someday, if people don't appreciate what we do and we don't have the money and we have to close up and send the mugs home, there's no shame in that. But I've never asked, and I don't want you to ask either. Really sort of incredible. Sort of confidence. And yet, so much activity. And again, Rinpoche would always say, these are the blessings of Tara. So this is, many people would say, although no one can say exactly for certain, the best guess is that this was absolutely one of, if not the principal practice of Bokor Rinpoche. He would do the 21 praises 21 times every day, in addition to the 4 or 5 or 6 hours of other formal meditation he did from 2:30 to 8. If he went on a long journey, he would do them 100 times in the car. And this has been carried on by Khenpo Rinpoche when Khenpo Rinpoche is in Taiwan right now, and many people are going to ask him to come to their business and to do something so that their business can go well, so that they can continue to provide for their families and the Dharma. People are going to ask him and come to see sick people who are ailing from this, that, or the other disease. People are going to come to him so that the activity of their Dharma center might flourish more than it has to date. And no matter what Rinpoche says, no matter what Rinpoche is asked, no matter what the wishes of the people who come to Rinpoche, he will do one practice for all those things, and it will be this very practice. This exact practice, as a matter of fact. So that speaks to the confidence that Bokor Rinpoche, Khenpo Rinpoche, and actually all the lamas of the lineage put into practice. So, okay, we don't have much time. Turning to the first page, too. If you look on your overview of the Green Tara practice, it says pages 2 to 6, prayers to Guru Rinpoche and the root guru are inseparable, and other prayers by Guru Rinpoche. So now we're looking at the handout, yeah? Pages 2 to 6. So these are not actually, and it's nice that the way they did this text, these are not actually part of the text that was composed by Jemgon Khenpo Lodro Tai, who is the author of the text that comes after page 6. And so there's a title page for the text written by Jemgon Khenpo Lodro Tai. Sometimes people will include the text, these prayers within that, because it's become the custom for most all the monasteries to recite these prayers beforehand, but they weren't written by Jemgon Khenpo Lodro Tai, so it's nice that they make this clear. Bokor Rinpoche didn't like it when things were added into a text that was created and made it look like the author of the text actually wrote or meant to include those pieces. It just keeps it clear who wrote what. Anyway, another aside that we probably shouldn't get into. So these beginning prayers, what you can imagine is in the sky before you, because this is a terma. Terma means a treasure that was revealed. A terma is a hidden treasure that somebody came along later. Hidden treasures mostly hidden by Guru Rinpoche and his disciples, meant for a time in the future when a predestined disciple will go and find this treasure, in this case a text, that was maybe hidden, miraculously hidden in a rock or a lake or somewhere, meant to be revealed for the people of that time. So this is quite new. I don't know exactly when it was discovered, but sometime in the 1800s, most certainly. And because it's connected to this lineage of Guru Rinpoche, we have this prayer to Guru Rinpoche in the beginning. For those of you who have done some other practices, like the Ngundro practices, in the beginning you have this prayer to the root Lama above your head, Pelden Salwe Lama Rinpoche. So that would be done in the Karma Kagyu tradition, and in the Nyingma tradition, this takes the place of that. Instead of visualizing your root guru or Vajradhara, they think of Padma Sambhava as being inseparable from the Lama. So the 7-line prayer goes from, it's basically the first 2 lines of page 2. And you can visualize Guru Rinpoche in the sky in front of you for all of these prayers from page 2 to 6. And there he is right there on the wall above Sally. It says that, I think I might as well just read this handout as we go. It's always appropriate to receive the 3 empowerments from the Guru at this point. So, like we do in other times, you can imagine that from Guru Rinpoche, white light comes from his forehead to your forehead, red light comes from his throat to your throat, blue light comes from his heart to your heart. You receive the blessings, and you can imagine him dissolving into light and melting into you. And when they do these kinds of practices in the monasteries, they don't take time when time should actually be taken. This is optional. This wouldn't necessarily be done, but also like when they do dissolutions in the monastery in the formal setting, for whatever reason, they don't take time to rest in the space afterwards, which really should be done. Like His Holiness Karmapa is will say this these days in his teachings, being the reformer that he is. And then it says, if you're alone, you can pause and rest for a bit. Then, since this is from the Terma, the Hidden Treasure tradition, some other prayers by Guru Rinpoche are recited. So those other prayers begin with that Emaho. This is a prayer to the Lama as the three Kayas. So we won't go into what the three Kayas are, the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. You can just think of these as preliminary prayers to the Lama inseparable from Guru Rinpoche, as a nod to the fact that this comes from the Nyingma tradition or the Terma tradition. And maybe there's going to be some new terminology here tonight for some of you, and we don't have time to explain it all. But now, if you're hearing it for the first time, this is the first time. Then the next time you hear it will be the second time, and slowly you'll start to get it. So I'm not even going to read through these preliminary prayers because I'm a little afraid of how little time we have. Is there a clock up here? Oh, great. Why is it already 7:30? Yeah. So let's move on from there. And now we come to the main practice. The essence of the two accumulations. And the first thing we have, looking back at the handout under Refuge and Bodhicitta, imagine Tara in the space in front of you. She is the embodiment of all the objects of refuge, including the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as well as the Gurus, Yidams, and Dakinis, and protectors. Think that all beings are going for refuge with you, then recite the verses for generating aspiration bodhicitta, the wish to attain Buddhahood in order to establish all beings in awakening, and application bodhicitta, actually engaging in the means to do so, the Tara practice in this instance. What could have been added here is that the very first line at the top of page 3 is like this invitation of Tara, the embodiment of all the objects of refuge, to come to the space before us. So it reads, in the sky in front, the noble Tara actually appears. So now that you have her there, you have the support of having done so with the liturgy, you recite, with your palms joined, the prayers for refuge and bodhicitta. So far so good, yeah? Simple. Prayers to Guru Rinpoche, because it comes from the Nyingma tradition, inviting Tara to the sky in front of us, refuge and bodhicitta. Then continuing with the outline, we have the accumulation of merit. One of the most common things to do to accumulate merit and to purify obscurations is what we call the sevenfold practice, more commonly the seven-branch prayer. I don't love the word prayer because it's not exactly just a prayer, it's like an actual practice. The seven-branch prayer, the sevenfold practice, includes prostrations and then then offerings and confession, rejoicing in the merit of others, asking the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, or whoever it may be to turn the wheel of the Dharma, to teach the Dharma, asking them to remain in samsara for the benefit of beings, and then dedicating the merit of what we've just done and all of our past virtue as well to the awakening of all beings. So now that we have this image of Tara in front of us and we've gone for refuge, we do things to accumulate merit, to gather virtue, because this is what is going to allow us to further through our practice. It's a little rare that in this practice we actually do this prayer twice in an elaborate fashion, but with slightly different objects. So first, just to Tara. So let me just read through this. I bow with devotion to the Venerable and Noble Tara, and to all the Buddhas and their sons, not really sons, but should be their heirs, meaning the Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Shravakas, residing in the 10 directions in the 3 times. So in Tibetan, that's 4 lines. So each 4 lines is one of these aspects of the sevenfold prayer. That's homage or prostrations, okay? So as you're reading this, in the beginning, you'll just read it. And probably the best you can do is know that these 4 lines are homage or prostration. And then as you get more familiar with it, more familiar with the language, maybe you can start to visualize yourself actually like making prostrations to Tara while you're doing this. But this comes with time. And first, it's just important to know what you're doing and why. Now the next 4 lines have to do with offerings, top of page 4. I make actual and imagined offerings of flowers, incense, lamp, perfumed water, food, music, and much more. Noble assembly, please accept them. And again, when you get a little more familiarization, if you're doing it at home, you don't even need to recite the words for these prayers or these passages. In the short book that Kim Rinpoche gave us, this exact prayer actually is in there. So that book that Kim Rinpoche gave us begins with Refuge in Bodhicitta, a different Refuge in Bodhicitta prayer, but one that many of you will know, Sanjay Chudon Soki Chognamla, by Atisha, one of the most common Refuge in Bodhicitta prayers. The second part of that short book that Kim Rinpoche gave us is this very same, word for word, 7-branch prayer. So sometimes to develop your skill or your ability to work with this prayer, you can just not recite the words, but just imagine stars in the sky in front. Imagine yourself doing a prostration. Now imagine an image of yourself to your right and left, 3 of you doing a prostration. Then gradually you can build this up, think about a room filled with you. Now expand it to a city. It's really good training to actually not just recite the words, but to do the practice in your mind. Once you get familiar with doing it in your mind, then it's easier to do both of those things together. This is true for all these aspects. So the second one is offering. So we just read the liturgy for the offerings, but you can also just imagine Tara is there, inseparable from the Guru. Imagine flowers falling from the sky. Imagine incense drifting about. And then you can really develop some great concentration or samadhi through these practices. Try and imagine it's an incense like you've never smelled before. It doesn't burn the nose at all. It's better than oxygen. It's like more pleasing. You can't get enough. You can do things like this in your practice, and it's really beneficial. And if anyone's coming to the Chinrezi retreat that we'll do in September, we'll do these kinds of exercises. Anyway, the second branch is making offerings. Then the third one is confession. I confess all sins, committed sins, bad word, I would say misdeeds, committed from beginningless time until now, including the 10 unvirtuous actions and the 5 deeds of immediate consequence, done with my mind under the influence of mental afflictions. So we say that by confessing and setting aside and vowing not to commit our misdeeds, this can purify the misdeeds that we've engaged in. The next point is rejoicing. I rejoice in the merit, the good deeds, the virtue of whatever virtue has been gathered throughout the 3 times by the Shravakas, Pratyekya Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and ordinary beings. We say that if we can witness another person's good fortune, merit, joy, and without any jealousy, from the depths of our heart, rejoice, be happy about them, be happy about that for them, it's said that actually you can gain the same amount of merit that they do through their action. I think Kim Rinpoche told a story of this, didn't he? Somebody asked Lama, what's the easiest way to accumulate merit? If he didn't tell it here, he told it recently. And he said the easiest way to accumulate merit is rejoicing. You can lie in bed. You don't even have to sit up straight. So the fourth of the 7 branches. The next one is asking the wheel of the Dharma to be turned. If the wheel of the Dharma isn't turned, where would we be? Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater, lesser, and ordinary vehicles in harmony with the diverse aptitudes and motivations of sentient beings. Pretty straightforward. I beseech you not to pass into nirvana, but until samsara is emptied, to look with compassion upon all sentient beings drowning in the ocean of suffering. So asking the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, awakened masters not to pass from the world, but to come again and again and to remain for the benefit of beings. May whatever merit I have accumulated become a cause for the enlightenment of all beings, and may I become a glorious guide of beings without delay. So the dedication. So, a lot of words, but pretty straightforward, right? Prayers to Guru Rinpoche. Tara appears in the space in front of us, refuge in bodhicitta. Then we do this 7-fold practice in her presence. So this is, as I said, is the same prayer in the small booklet that Kim Rinpoche arranged, and it's also the exact same 7-branch prayer from Chinrezi, just changing. The only thing that's been switched out is the name of Tara. So you'll recognize these words for those of you who do Chinrezi. So looking back to the handout, there's more written there about the 7-branch prayer, but you can look at that on your own because it's now 7:40. So now at the bottom of page 5, when we do ritual practices in this tradition, offerings are a big part of it. So there are always offerings set out on an altar there. Sometimes it's just water. Sometimes it are these traditional offerings that are going to be outlined here. Water for drinking, water for washing, flowers and incense and illumination, things like candles and things, scented oils, food and music. So, and we say it's good to make offerings, like to actually put water in those bowls and maybe flowers under the altar and to burn incense and do all these kinds of things to set out food. But no matter how much we put up there, no matter how many physical offerings we put up there, we can double them in an instant in our mind. And then we can triple them, etc., etc., etc. And we say that actually the imagined offerings are even more beneficial, which doesn't let us off the hook from actually making offerings. And one of the ways that we multiply the merit of the offerings that we do make is through what we call consecration. So here we have the consecration of the offerings. The offerings we set on the altar are merely symbolic of the offerings presented within the practice. It is said that mental offerings are more profound than tangible ones. However, this doesn't mean that we needn't extend effort and expense in terms of material offerings. Skipping down to the second paragraph, through the consecration, the offerings and environment dissolve into emptiness, and in that place arises a pure land, extremely beautiful, made of light. It is adorned with a vast array of inconceivable offerings of divine quality. And then we'll get to that mantra at the end. So we say through the mantras involved, through the certain mudras that we use. Mantras are these syllables, usually in Sanskrit, that have they do have literal meaning, which often corresponds to the action, but they also have a deeper, let's just say, power to bring about some effect. Through the mantra, the mudra, and our meditation, we increase these offerings. So this first one is just to purify that which is there, starting the last line of page 5, Om Va Bejra Amrita Kundali Hana Hana Hom Pe. And then this second mantra, with this second one we imagine that everything, the container, the place where we are, the actual offerings, they dissolve into emptiness. Because then from the state of that emptiness we can bring anything back, we can create anything we want. So then beginning at the top of page 6, the environment becomes a pure realm of lotus design with unlimited shapes, designs, and adornments. Divine substances created by samadhi become inconceivable offering substances. That's an offering. So we imagine that the pure realm, thinking it's a Buddha field basically, like Kim Rinpoche taught a lot about Sukhavati or Dewa Chen, where everything is supportive for the practice of Dharma, where things are of divine substance, quality, where everything is just a support for spiritual progress. And then we have these mantras. So these are the mantras for the 8 offerings that I just mentioned, and I don't think we have time to go over it to the degree that everybody's going to learn it. And they're a little different in this practice than they are in other standard practices. But they go like this. It's Om Vajra Argam Ahum. And oftentimes when we do these mantras and make these mudras, we snap afterwards. The snap means we're offering them People go Om Vajra Agamahum Soa, Om Vajra Padram Padram Soa. But here we're not actually offering them, we're just consecrating them, so you don't actually snap. But this is a detail that probably I shouldn't even have brought up. You'll learn all these things. It's going to be, it's really great that Kim Rinpoche came and he gave this empowerment, and this practice has been shepherded by Julie and a small group of other people over many, many years, but it hasn't really taken off. There just hasn't been the support. But I think now with Kim Rinpoche giving the empowerment and coming here and knowing the history of this practice in connection with Bok Rinpoche and Khenpo Rinpoche, it seems like there's an opportunity here. So it's not going to be easy, It's really not that complicated, but it does take time to get accustomed to it. But you can learn, You can very easily learn if you just start coming and you have the interest. Read it while you're at home. Listen to the recording that we'll make available. So it's going to be work, but I really hope that it can kind of take off from here, and I'm really pleased to see how many of you came. I hope this session demystifies it more than it mystifies it. Anyway, what you do here is now you imagine that all this ordinary water has become like a divine water and in vast quantities, and then we have mudras for each one. Om Benza Agamahum, Om Benza Pajamahum, Om Benza Pushpeo, Om Benza Dupeo, Om Benza Alokeo, Om Benza Gendeo, Om Benza Nivideo, Om Benza Shapta Ahum. And then this last one, as it says in the handout, Om Benza Saparanakam. And there are different mudras, but this means it's like a Vajra profusion. It means all of these just becoming extremely vast. So what you've now done is you've created this pure land with all these offerings set out within it, like you're ready to invite somebody. Is this going too fast? So looking back to the handout on page 2, the first heading there, offering and homage to the 3 jewels. So first we have the invitation and offering a seat. So remember when we began, we had Tara in the sky in front, and we went for refuge, and then we did the 7-fold practice in her presence, right? We did. And then we consecrated the offerings and made this wonderful space. Now we're going to invite the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and we're going to kind of do the same thing. So looking back at your text on page 6, last line at the end, all lamas, victors means Buddhas and their sons. Sons has nothing to do with gender. It means bodhisattvas and pratyekya Buddhas and Shravakas. Of the 10 directions and the 4 times, assemble in the space in front. Vajra Samaja. This is just a gathering mudra. It's like, I want you all to come. You do it like this, right? So it's kind of like you're gathering something in. You don't need to learn it now, but you can just hear it now. Vajra Samaja, you've invited them all to be there in the midst of all these offerings. And then it continues, you are the protectors of all sentient beings without exception. You conquer the hordes of Maras. Maras are things that want to impede our spiritual practice and their hosts. You understand everything without exception, just as it is. Conquerors, please approach this place together with your retinue. Then Pema Kamalaya Satam. Pema is lotus, yeah, it's really Padma. This text is written with the way Tibetans pronounce Sanskrit. Anyway, we're offering them a lotus seat. We're saying, all of you, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Shravakas and Pratyekya Buddhas, please come here to accept our offerings and have a seat. So there's another little mudra you do here, giving somebody a seat, right? Don't need to worry about that now. Now what we do, that we've invited them and asked them to sit down, we do another 7-branch prayer. Okay, different words. This is really common. Let's first look back to the handout. Again, page 2. The first line is an invitation, where we said, all lamas, victors, and their sons of the 10 directions and 4 times assemble in the space in front. Vajra Samaja. That's the invitation. One is inviting the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and enlightened lamas in their retinues. The mantra means Vajra assembly. The following 4 lines are praise and further invitation to reside in front of us. This is followed by the mantra and the mudra to have a seat upon a lotus flower. Pema Kamalaya Satam. Now we have another 7-fold practice. This one's really common. It's done like before empowerments, it's done before major teachings. So within the context of this practice, to get familiar with it is really handy actually. Then when you go to India or a big Lama comes here for a formal teaching, they're going to recite this and you'll know it. You'll, hey, I know that. So there are a couple more verses. The last sevenfold practice had 7 stanzas, 7 4-line stanzas. This has a few more because there are a couple more for the offerings and there are a couple more for the homage in the beginning, but we're not going to go into all that because I have discipline. But it reads, with devoted body, speech, and mind, I pay homage to all these lions among men, however many there be, who appear in the worlds of the 10 directions and 3 times. Through the purity and power of my aspirations for excellent conduct, all the victorious ones appear clearly to mind. So again, this is homage, this first part of this prayer, and you're reciting this and you're doing this practice in the presence of all these Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and their heirs. Bowing reverently with bodies as numerous as the atoms in all the realms, I pay homage to all the victorious ones. On each atom I imagine as many Buddhas as there are atoms, each residing in the midst of their heirs. Like that, I imagine the whole Dharmadhatu completely filled with victorious ones. To those with oceans of inexhaustible praiseworthy qualities, I proclaim all the qualities of the victorious ones with sounds containing oceans of branches of melody. Thus, I praise all the Sugatas. So that's the homage. That was the first part. The second part is offerings. With the finest flowers, finest garlands, music ointments, supreme parasols, supreme lamps, and the finest incense, I make offerings to the victorious ones. With the finest cloths, supreme scents, and heaps of fine medicinal powers equal in size to Mount Meru, all displayed in sublime, supreme, and magnificent ways, I also make offerings to those victorious ones. Imagining whatever offerings I make to be vast and unsurpassable, I venerate all the victorious ones. Thus, through the power of faith and excellent conduct, I pay homage and make offerings to all the victors. So that finishes homage and offerings. Now, the rest of the prayer, I believe, unfolds in 1 stanza for each of the remaining 5 aspects of the 7 branches. I confess each and every one of my misdeeds, whatever they may have been, done with body, speech, and also mind, while overpowered by desire, aggression, and stupidity. There's a nice little teaching in here and in the other one as well. It's like, whether something looks like it's virtuous or non-virtuous isn't as important as what was motivating it. So both of these prayers say, I confess things I've done while overpowered by the afflictions. Things like greed and anger and pride and jealousy and ignorance, right? That's the real test. Continuing, I rejoice in all the merit, whatever it be, of all the victors of the 10 directions, the Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, those in training, those beyond training, and all beings. I entreat the protectors, those lamps of the world of the 10 directions, who passing through the stages of awakening attain Buddhahood beyond attachment, to turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. With palms joined together, I supplicate those who intend to demonstrate nirvana to remain for kalpas. Kalpas like an eon, a very long period of time, as numerous as there are in the atoms in all the realms, for the welfare and happiness of beings. And now the last one, the dedication. I dedicate, and this is also quite a common prayer. Many of you would recognize the Tibetan, Chaksa Wadon Chushing Shakpa Dong. All of these 7 branches are now contained in these last 4 lines. I dedicate all virtue, however slight, I have accumulated through prostrations, offering, confessions, rejoicing, and all merit, requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of the Dharma and supplicating them to remain in the world to enlightenment. So we've moved quite a bit through the text to this point, but just to recap, yeah? We invite Tara to the sky, refuge, 7-branch prayer to Tara. We consecrate the offerings, invite the Buddhas to come to the sky before us. 7-branch prayer to the Buddhas, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And now, as is common in the Tibetan tradition, we make a special kind of offering. And here it's the mandala offering. Now actually, when this practice is done in Mirik, they don't do this long mandala offering. Page 11 through 15 is the standard mandala offering that comes in the preliminary practices, the Ngundro practices. And I'm going to skip it tonight because it's optional. It's not actually part. So here's an example. This isn't actually part of Lodro Thay's composition. I do not believe. I'm 95% sure of that. So even though some monasteries do the full mandala offering here, it would have been Bokar Rinpoche, if I may be so bold, I think it would have been Bokar Rinpoche's choice to have this as an insert, not so it doesn't look like it was included by Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Thay. Anyway, let's skip that since it's optional. So turn to page 15 and look at the second line where it says Omahon, because this again, this is a mandala offering. So same thing, the object is the same. We have the Buddhas and all their heirs and the sky in front of us. We've just done the sevenfold practice. And now to continue this accumulation of merit, we do what we call the mandala offering. Mandala means basically the world and everything wonderful that could be contained within it. So in the, this was written, good God knows when. I mean, it's a very traditional way that the world was seen in, let's say, ancient India or before, where it talks about, the 4 main continents and the 8 subcontinents. And a lot of stuff comes up for people when saying there aren't 4 continents, there are 7 continents. And what does this have to do with the world I live in? But you don't really need to worry about that. You just know that this is symbolic of the universe and everything that is beautiful and worthy of offering contained in that universe. And this is what some culture thought it was at some point. And to that, it always says at the end, actually, you add everything else that is pleasing and wonderful and beautiful. So don't get too hung up on the language. So continuing from 15, second line at Omahon, this is the mandala offering. With reverence, I continually offer to the 3 jewels, the 3 roots, the ocean of the Dharma protectors and gods of wealth, all the bodies, possessions, and virtues of myself and limitless sentient beings. So offering the bodies, this is just, offering is mainly about undermining our attachment, So we offer everything to which we are attached, one of the principal things being our bodies. Of course, all of our wealth, and then even our virtue. So this comes up again and again in teachings, actually, these 3. Everything that we hold dear. We offer all of this together with the Supreme Mountain. Now back to the classical configuration. The 4 continents, the sun and the moon, and the inconceivable enjoyments of gods and men, perpetually emanated as great billowing clouds of offerings as vast as those of Samantabhadra. Samantabhadra is a bodhisattva who is really adept at making offerings. So we want to make our offerings like this offering master could make his offerings. May I complete the great accumulation of merit, and having done so, may the radiance of wisdom increase. The reason that we generate merit, that we engage in the sevenfold practice of prostrating and offering, confessing, the reason we make these offerings in elaborate ways is to put ourselves in a place where we can have this insight into the nature of reality, or for this wisdom to dawn. This is always, we talk about the 6 paramitas, I'm sure all of you have heard of those, of generosity and ethics and patience and the rest. And all of those are to realize this insight, this wisdom into the nature of reality. So during this passage, there's a traditional way to hold your hands. This is symbolic of in the middle there. That's the Supreme Mountain, the one in the middle. Then you have these 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, these 2 fingers together, that's 1. These 2 fingers together, that's 2. That's 3. That's 4. That's symbolic of the mountain in the middle and the 4 continents. You can learn it from other people later. But this is what people do. And usually people will, if it's at an empowerment, sometimes they'll pass around rice, so that they consider it bad to do it empty-handed. It's more auspicious if you have something actually in your hands. So that's why they pass out rice sometimes when they do this. And if you don't have anything else, then people will grab their mala and hold their mala to do it, just so you're not doing it empty-handed. So that's the mandala offering, and then you end it with this mantra-ish thing, Om Guru Deva Da Kini Sava Ratna Mandala Puja Mega Ahom. So I skipped a couple things on our handout. Looking back to the handout, the second subheading on page 2, we had the sevenfold practice, which we don't need to say anything about. Then we have the mandala offering, and I say there where you can skip. And then after the mandala offering, we have the expression of our wishes. So this is often the case that once we do positive things like a whole practice or just making the 7 branch prayer and offerings, we make a wish, what we want to come from that. So in that vein, starting with, it's a little confusing where to look. Yeah, I keep looking at the Tibetan, so maybe I'm not always telling you where to look. 16, line 2, the English starts at the very end with Namo. This is the expression of wishes. Buddhas, Dharma, Sangha, Yidams, Dakinis, Dharma Protector. Oh, we did that. We said that. But anyway, this is the expression of wishes. Gods of wealth, lords of the Terma, you display the nature of unimpeded diversity. You display the nature of unimpeded diversity unimpeded diversity from within the essence of one wisdom. Your compassion and activity are wonderful. I go for refuge and pay homage with all my heart to you, who are the refuge and protectors of all beings, the very embodiment of loving kindness and wisdom. I offer you my body and possessions. Remember, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and all these enlightened objects are in front of us. In your compassion, please always protect me and limitless sentient beings. Bless us so that sickness and harm are pacified, life and merit flourish, and all of our wholesome wishes without exception are fulfilled in accord with Dharma. So that, in a sense, is sort of the preliminaries to this practice. We've engaged in all these actions basically to accumulate merit and sort of build up this ability, the blessing to be able to do the practice in even a deeper way, you could say. And now we begin the actual practice where we become Tara and invite the Taras to come before us. So looking at the bold on page 2 of the handout and towards the bottom, offerings and homage to Noble Tara. So for the next few lines, we have the self and front visualization. So looking at that, 17.3, so the very last lines of page, okay, in the Tibetan it's the last lines of 17. In the English it's the top of 18. So it says, complete in the instant of recollection. That means sometimes we develop our visualizations through many stages, first like the seed, and then maybe a seed syllable, then maybe something else. But here it's not like that. Just in one moment of thinking, we become Tara. Complete in the instant of recollection, I appear in the form of Venerable Noble Lady. In my heart, above a moon, so here moon means a moon disk. Like you can see that Tara is sitting, what she's sitting on is white. Yeah, you've got the red of the lotus, and then above that there's like a round white thing she's sitting on, and we call that a moon disk. So that's what moon means here. Same thing, and so she's sitting on that, and also in one's heart center now as Tara, there's a moon disk. And upon this moon disk is a green tam. So all of the Vajrayana Yidams have a seed syllable associated from them. It's like their essence. And for Tara, it's tam. And at some point in the future, we should write that out so you can see what it looks like. It's too much to explain it right now, so we'll skip it. But anyway, you can learn that later. You can also, for now, just visualize it in English. T-A-M, green, written in green light. From that, innumerable light rays emanate, inviting the 21 emanations of the Noble Lady of Tara and an ocean of the 3 jewels. Billowing like clouds, they gather in the sky in front. So, in one moment, you imagine that you have become Tara. So, made of light, always made of light, yeah? Appearing but insubstantial. Just like she appears in the image, but insubstantial, one face, 2 arms. The right hand is palm face up on the right knee, and the right leg is slightly extended. The left hand is holding the stem of a lotus between her thumb and ring finger, and then that lotus comes and blooms by her left ear. Okay, see, in this one, oftentimes they do this. Here it says, it shows that she's holding a lotus in this hand as well, but for this practice, don't worry about that. You just imagine it's an open palm resting on her knee. Smiling, very peaceful, sort of resting at ease, adorned by silks and the customary jewelry, radiating light, made of light, etc. And then from this tom in your heart center, light radiates, and a green Tara, just like you, appears in the center, and then surrounding her, you can say it's a lotus, a 20-petaled lotus. Then on a petal, each of those 20 petals of the lotus is another Tara, making 21 Taras in all. And we have a Lois, who just finished the 3-year retreat. Before retreat, she made Kim Rinpoche has a book on Tara, in which many of the different traditions of Tara and their depictions are arranged in this book. She took those images and made, on one piece of paper, she made this form, or she illustrated the configuration of the 21 Taras. So tonight, somehow Linda's going to work it out that there's like a Dropbox folder. So you can all get the link to this folder where it'll have this image, all these 21 Taras, as well as the recording of Umse Chupel doing the practice. So we won't go into those more than that for now. But you imagine that they're there, and it's not just the 21 Taras. They're surrounded by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other enlightened objects of refuge. And then from the middle of 18, the unborn luminous expanse of Dharmakaya dawns in the form of the unceasing wisdom body of the noble lady. So that is to say, basically enlightened mind, yeah? The luminous expanse of the Dharmakaya, we can say enlightened mind, is taking the form of Tara. The Dharmakaya is formless, colorless, shapeless. In order for us to have a skillful interaction with it, the Dharmakaya appears in the form of Tara. A net of magical display that appears to guide beings. Please approach noble Tara. So that was the invitation, as it says at the bottom of page 2 of the handout. The next 4 lines are for the formal invitation of the front visualization. Then we have the presenting of the lotus seat. So most of the yidams, these enlightened objects of refuge that we visualize, sit on lotus seats. So now you ask her to remain there in front of you. And that begins 18. Oh, I didn't explain this, but probably you figured it out by now. Page 18.3 means page 18, line 3. To 19.1 means to page 19, line 1. Bhagavati, in your loving kindness and compassion for me and all beings, please exert your miraculous powers and remain here for as long as I make offerings to you. And again, we have this Pamakamalaya Satam, asking her to take a seat. And now we've set the stage for the main part of this practice. Preliminary accumulation of merit through the 7 branch prayers to Tara, consecrated offerings, invited the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, made offerings to them. Now we've generated ourselves as Tara, invited the Taras to take their place in front of us, and now we have the main part of the practice, which is general offerings, mandala offering, and the praises. So this is really the heart of the practice. These general offerings, the mandala offering, and the praises. And we do this set of 3, general offerings, mandala offering, and the praises, 3 times. So for the first time, looking at 19.1, Om, I fill the Dharma Dhatu, so basically all of space, with clouds of Samantabhadra. This is that bodhisattva who is adept at making offerings, right? I fill the Dharma Dhatu with clouds of Samantabhadra's offerings, actually present, arising from my mind. I offer these to Noble Tara and her retinue. Omar Tara Sapariwara. Then now we go through these different mudras again. And we won't go into that now. So we think that we've just made all these offerings to her, doing our best to actually visualize them. And now we do a short mandala offering. Again, we hold the mala or whatever in the same way. And we say, Om Ahum, I offer to the embodiments of the compassion and the glory and richness of the trilocosm and its contents, as well as my body and all my possessions and virtues. So those three things again, body, possessions, and virtues. Having accepted them, please grant your blessing. So those two things that we just did there, from the top of 19 through the top of 20, we're going to repeat those 3 times. Sorry, we do it just once now. Now we're going to recite the praises, and then we'll come back and say those again and again recite the praises. So once you've done that, then you recite the praises, traditionally twice. And the praises in your texts, you would have to turn down till you get to this green piece of paper. It's after page 46. And then it's P1 through P8. So like I said with Bo Grimshe, he did these 21 praises 21 times each day. So this is like the main, for people who don't do this whole practice every day, that's what people normally do if they want to maintain this connection with Tara. They'll do these praises once, 3 times, 7 times every day. And for those of you who want to start doing the practice, that's a really good thing to do, because it's kind of long, and when it tends to be done in a group, they go a little fast because it's long. And if you don't go a little faster, it will take a really, really long time. So starting to get familiar by doing it on your own is really helpful. And when if you people come, I'm sure that Julia and the group will make it accessible so that everybody can sort of come up to speed together, you know? So here's where, and it says so in the text, you would recite these praises twice. If you look at the small print back on page 20, on that first line it says, thus the special mandala has been offered. Chant the Tantra of the King of Praises 2 times. And we're not even going to read those right now, because A, it's long, and there's... Sorry? It says 2 times in my text. Top of second line of 20. So know that you would then recite them twice, and then you continue right where you left off. On the left-hand side of page 20, and this is repeating that same offering we did just a minute ago. Om, I fill the Dharma Dhatu with clouds of Samantabhadra's offerings actually present, arising from my mind. I offer these to noble Tara and her retinue. Om Aratara Saparavar Agyam Pajam Pushpe Dupe Alke Gende Nevari Shapta Pratita Soha. And then we had the mandala offering, which we did just a minute ago. We do it again. Om Ahum. I offer to the embodiments of compassion, the glory and richness of the trilocosm and its contents, as well as my body and all my possessions and virtues. Having accepted them, please grant your blessing. Om Savartata Gadaratna Mandala Puja Ho. And now here's something that's added. So before we had Tara sitting like this, right? With her right hand in what we call the mudra of generosity, like things emanating from it. And now it says, 21 in the second line, her right hand mudra of supreme generosity changes into the mudra of giving protection. So it comes up like this. This is the mudra of giving protection. It's like, it's going to be okay. Yeah? So you change this in your visualization of Tara and the sky in front of you. I and all to be protected are placed under this and given relief from all dangers. Then continuing with the small print, imagining thus, recite the 21 praises 3 times. Then you go back to those 21 praises and do it 3 times. When they do it here at the center, since it takes a long time, these days they're only doing it once for the first recitation when you would do it twice. They're doing it twice here where you would do it 3 times. And after this it would be done 7 times, and they're doing it 3 times. So it's being made more accessible for everyone to feel like they can come and participate and it not be too much. Okay, so after you've recited it 3 times, then you come right back to where you left off again with the Om, and this is the same verse, 3rd time here, right? I fill the Dharma Dhatu with clouds of Samantabhadra's offerings, actually present, arising from my mind. I offer these to the noble Tara and her retinue, same offerings, and then again the mandala, which we've done before, twice. Om Ahong, I offer to the embodiments of compassion and glory and richness, and compassion, the glory and richness of the trilocosm and its contents, as well as my body and all possessions and virtues. Having accepted them, please grant your blessings. Om Sarvatatagattarana Mandala Puzaho. And before, we just had that extra verse where she turned her hand like this, right? Now we have another little extra verse that changes things a little. From her body, a stream of ambrosia, nectar, descends, entering me and all those to be protected through the tops of our heads, through the crown of our heads. It fills our whole bodies, and every kind of blessing enters us. So you can imagine that during these next recitations of the praises, and as it says in the small print, imagining that and its benefits, recite the 21 praises 7 times. And here they do it 3 times. So this is kind of the crux of the practice. We did all this other stuff kind of to get to this point where we're doing this 4-lined liturgy to make offerings, making offerings to Tara. We do the 4 lines to make the mandal offering to Tara, and then we recite her praises. And then we do it again. We make these offerings again, we do the mandala again, and we recite her praises 1 more time, or a couple more times. Then we do the offerings again, we do the mandala again, and we recite the praises 7 times. So that's kind of the heart of the practice. Does it feel really overwhelming? A little bit? A little bit, yeah. If you look at the handout again and again and go through the text, I think it really will help to demystify it. Because like we spoke of, like the point I wanted to make in the beginning is we know all these aspects of the practice, you know? But when we start running them all together, we lose track of where we are and who's in the sky in front and what are we doing. But I think with not too much familiarization, if you really, look at this once a day for a week or 2 weeks, I think it will demystify all on its own. And it's just a beautiful practice. But like all new things, of course, it's a little difficult in the beginning. Once we've done what I just said is like the heart of the practice, now we have a verse that's usually termed the benefits. So if you look back to the handout, letter-sized paper on page 3, the first bold print about 2/3 the way down the page, this passage recounts some of the benefits of the practice, including protection from lower rebirths, etc. So let's just read it. Anyone who has genuine devotion for the deity and recites this clearly and mindfully at dawn, upon arising, and at dusk, will receive protection from all dangers, complete pacification of all negativities, and freedom from all unfortunate rebirths. Thank you. They will soon receive empowerment by 70 million victors and attain better conditions, will arrive at ultimate state of Buddhahood. By remembering the deity, deadly poisons will be completely nullified, regardless of whether they abide within the environment or within beings, even when eaten or drunk. One will throw off the host of sufferings inflicted by duns, these are types of spirits, epidemics and poisons, and this can be accomplished for other sentient beings as well through clearly reciting these praises 2, 3, and 7 times. Those who want a child will obtain a child. Those desiring wealth will obtain wealth. All wishes will be fulfilled, and there will be no obstacles, each and every obstacle having been overcome. So with that, now we move into what we could call the concluding phase of the practice. And the first thing we do for the concluding phase is we make a sort of special kind of offering, ritualized offering of sustenance, I guess you can say. So looking back to the handout, bottom of 3, the torma offering a torma. First we consecrate it, just like we consecrated the offerings to make them more than what they appear. when we're offering a torma, which is often, there are many ways to do this, but you could make a traditional torma, which is like a sculpture of oats or dough with butter on it, or you can just use some cookies. You sprinkle it with water. We imagine that our physical offering dissolves into emptiness, and from an om, the syllable om, appears a precious vessel, and within that, wisdom nectar arises from the 3 syllables om ahom. So we consecrate it beginning at the bottom of 24 with this first mantra, Om Vajra, Om Bedzar Amrita, Kundali Hana Hana Hom Pe. And then we imagine that whatever support we have dissolves into emptiness at Oma Sabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhava Shuddha Hom. And now what do we visualize? From the nature of emptiness arises the syllable Om. This is transformed into a vast offering vessel made of jewels, not really jewels, precious things, jewels included. Inside, from the 3 syllables being Om Ah Hom, the torma arises, and it is an ambrosia or a nectar of undefiled wisdom, Om Ah Hom. So that finishes the consecration. So from 24:1 down to 25:2, 24:3. 24:3 to 25:2 is the consecration, and now we offer it. And you offer it with this Om Aretare Saparewara Idam Balingta Kakakai Kai, and you hold your hands like this, like you had it, like your hands were a precious vessel filled with nectar. And you go Om Aretare Saparewara Idam Balingta Kakakai Kai. Remember before I said these snaps are like please partake. So you do that 3 times. Om Aretare Saparewara Idam Balingta Kakakai Kai. Om Aretare Saparewara Idam Balingta Kakakai Kai. So that's 2. Green Tara and the 21 Taras. Then you also, but those aren't the only things we invited to the space in front, right? We also had the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other enlightened objects of refuge, and we want to be polite. We don't want them to feel left out. So Omakaro, we do the same thing for the Omakaro mantra. Omakaro Mukam Sarva Dharmanam De Nutpen Nata Ta Oma Hompe Soha. You do that 3 times as well and snap. So basically, from that last line of 24 down to the last line of 25, you've consecrated this ritual torma, and you've offered it to Tara, the 21 Taras, and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So then, for the handout, we're getting there. Page 4, and we have expressing wishes. So now we've done another act of virtue, consecrating this torma and offering it to Tara, and now we make some aspirations, what we want to come of that. So that's from 25:3 to 26:1. So at the bottom of 25 it says, Om, because I have offered this fine torma of offering and generosity, please look upon me with your great wisdom, having accepted it with great pleasure. Please bestow all cities without exception. So that's the very brief prayer of what we want to happen. And now again, we're in the concluding phase. So once again, we make the offerings. Offerings like we've been making them several times throughout this practice. Om Aretare Saparewara Agyam Pajam Pushpe Dupe Aloke Gende Nevade Shapta Pratija Soha. And now we have praise and supplication continuing from here. Om, you arose from the face of Avalokiteshvara, you of the lotus family of Amitabha. I pay homage to and praise the noble Tara who embodies the activity of all Buddhas. Bowing with bodies as numerous as there are atoms in all the realms, with supreme faith I pay homage to and praise in every way all of you who are worthy of veneration. And then continuing. Venerable noble lady and your retinue, with your non-referential compassion, please think of me with love. Please bless me that my prayers be accomplished without obstruction. May the teachings of the Buddha prosper and flourish. May the holders of the teachings live long and harmoniously. May all harmful obstacles be pacified. May the activities of study and practice spread. May sickness, famine, agitation, and strife be pacified. May the glory and prosperity of Dharma flourish. May the authority of rulers who protect the Dharma spread. May there be happiness in central and border countries. Please protect us from present and ultimate dangers, the sufferings of samsara and the lower realms, the 16 dangers, untimely death, bad dreams, bad omens, and so on. May life merit, influence, experience, and realization increase. May unvirtuous thoughts not arise. May the two bodhicittas arise effortlessly. May we accomplish all our wishes in accord with Dharma. From now until I reach the heart of enlightenment, may we be inseparable, and may you watch over me with your compassionate eyes like a mother towards her only child. May we become indivisible. So that pretty much finishes the practice. Yeah? And then to wind down the practice, then continuing from the top of 29, we begin the mantra recitation. The frontal visualization, so this is the Tara, green Tara in the middle, the 21 Taras surrounding her, and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. The frontal visualization melts into light and dissolves into me. Through her blessing, we become inseparable. I appear in the form of noble Tara, without intrinsic nature. So you already were Tara, but saying your form is appearing as Tara, but there's no solidity there. And then in that state, you recite her mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. For many practices, the mantra recitation, like when we do Chenrezi, the mantra is the main part of the practice of Chenrezi. And it's important here too, but most people will say that the main thing is actually what we just talked about before, these offerings, the mandala, and the praises. But we have the mantra here, and in the small booklet that Kim Rinpoche put together, like we said, it begins with refuge and bodhicitta. Then there's the 7-branch prayer, just like we had in here. Then I should look at the booklet. Then I think the self-visualization, and then the praise, and then the mantra. So the mantra's in there too. You can do that as many times as you like. Typically in a formal setting, it's just done 100 times. If you're doing it on your own, you can do it as much as you like. And then after that, we come to the concluding verses. So after every practice like this, we make a confession saying for things we did that weren't right or the mistakes that we made, please forgive us. So the first thing you do is you recite the 100-syllable mantra, which serves that purpose. It's not written out in the text, so if when you come to the practice, if you don't have it memorized, you can bring it written out like from your Ngundro text. And if you don't have it, like if you don't have a Ngundro text, ask somebody and you can get a photocopy of it. After you do the 100-syllable mantra, then you do this next prayer at the bottom of 29. Please forgive all the mistakes I have made here, whatever was done wrong or left out, and whatever I was unable to do properly. That's it. And now this next prayer is, now there are 2 prayers and you have to choose one. This first prayer is for when you don't have like a tanka or a torma or a statue. And what you're doing is saying, okay, we invited you to come, and now you can go back to where you came from. So it says, but we don't usually recite this because usually there is something like a tanka. There's this tanka here, so you wouldn't recite this, so maybe I won't even say it. It's marked in the handout. It says for 30 and 31, in our tradition, this passage is not recited if there is a support, a photo or a torma on the altar. So what we do recite is the next prayer, which begins on line 2 of page 30. Om, please stay here together with this support for as long as samsara exists. Remaining here, please bestow freedom from sickness, long life, mastery, and supreme siddhi. Then you say Om Sutra Tishta Benzoye Soha. And then we have the disillusion. So the deity and my mind are inseparable. I rest in the innate state, the Dharma Dhatu. So here you let go of this visualization of Tara and just rest in what's left. Once you let go of that visualization, best case scenario, the nature of mind. And then following that is a fairly traditional dedication prayer. By this virtue, may I quickly accomplish the noble Tara and then establish all beings without a single exception in that state. And after the dedication prayer is a prayer of auspiciousness. Like a wish-fulfilling jewel in an excellent vase, you grant the fulfillment of all our wishes without hindrance. May we be inseparable from the venerable Tara, the victors and their heirs, and may there be the auspiciousness of their compassionate protection. So that's it. So I know that was kind of a lot. If you're not familiar, but the degree to which you are familiar with, once you learn any one practice well, like this, if you then got introduced to another practice, you're like 80% there. Because you know it's going to start with refuge. You know there's going to probably be some verses, a 7-branch prayer or a 7-fold practice for the accumulation of merit. You know you're going to consecrate the offerings. You know you're going to make those offerings. You know there's going to be a self-visualization, often a front visualization mantra. Once you understand the pieces, it makes it much easier to digest. So, and again, with just repetition and familiarization, there are many people in this room who know it quite well because they just did it again and again and again. And if you have the interest, you definitely could learn it too. So I really hope that Rinpoche is coming and the people coming out of retreat and us being able to come here together can spawn some activity around this practice. So even though we said we were going to go to 7:30, I feel like we should have a little bit of time for discussion. But if anybody needs to go, like they have a babysitter waiting for them to get home, you should feel free to go, yeah? Does anybody, are there any questions or, yeah? Does anyone have Khenpo Rinpoche's little green booklet handy?
You mentioned getting familiar by just doing the 21 praises. If I was doing the 21 praises outside of another practice, I would start with the refuge and bodhicitta and then just do 21 praises and then dedicate. If I did the 21, did I misunderstand how you were suggesting we get familiar?
Good segue. There are options. You know, it could be done in many different ways. But since Khenpo Rinpoche did, really for the purpose of KCC, like this isn't something that exists anywhere else. Rinpoche put this together for the occasion of him coming here to give the empowerment. And I could say a lot about this actually. The way that this dovetailed with the empowerment was so serendipitous, it's really beyond belief. Like Rinpoche didn't know which empowerment he was going to give before he came. And he wasn't thinking, I asked him, he wasn't thinking of that empowerment when he put it together, but it's just incredible. Like usually in an empowerment, you recite something for refuge. It's usually not this common prayer. It happened to be this common prayer, so you all had it in the booklet in front of you. Looking at the booklet now, page 1. Then it said, okay, now, as I've been saying, we do the 7-branch prayer to accumulate more merit so that we can do things better. So we do it right before we receive an empowerment to enhance our store of merit so we can maybe receive the empowerment in a deeper way. So in the text, actually, it had us do the second 7-branch prayer that's in this text, right? The one we did to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. But Rinpoche said, well, I mean, it's still a 7-branch prayer, so let's just do this one. It's a 7-branch prayer. So we did the 7-branch prayer that begins on page 2. Then the next thing that happened was you had to visualize yourself in the form of Tara to receive the blessings of the body of Tara. And that's the next thing that comes here in this practice. Instantly, bottom of 5, instantly I take the form of Arya Tara. Then the next thing was we need to receive the blessings of the speech of Tara. And what do you visualize? You visualize a stream of the 21 praises coming from Tara and entering your form now as Tara. And that's the next thing in the booklet, the 21 praises. But then not only that, you also visualize the mantra coming from Tara's out her mouth and going into your mouth and into your heart. The next thing in the booklet is the mantra. And then to realize the blessings of Tara's mind, you dissolve the visualization and rest in what's left. And that's the next thing that came in the booklet. It was uncanny. Beautiful. So, if you want to do the praises, to become more familiar, to make it easier to engage in this practice when you come here, this is a great thing to do. Just do this, yeah. And if you don't have time and you just want to do the praise, you can do that too. You can just do the praise. Always preceding anything with refuge and bodhicitta, right? But if you don't have time to do that 7-branch prayer, that's okay. Here, Rinpoche there's no front visualization that's explicit. So it says, you yourself arise as Tara. But whenever we do that, especially in the Nyingma tradition, oftentimes it's implied that the front visualization comes at the same time. So if you're drawn to doing that, if you want to start working with that visualization, you can do that. At the same time, you imagine yourself as Tara, you can imagine there being a similar Tara in the sky in front, with or without the other 20. You're welcome. Yeah.
Would you comment on doing this practice in Tibetan versus doing it in English? Mm-hmm. It's a new practice for me, and I understand it's done in Tibetan at this center, but you've been doing it in English, and I just wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. The reason I did it in English tonight is if I would have read the Tibetan, it would have taken a lot more time. And I mean, why read the Tibetan when nobody's understanding what I'm saying? There is a reading transmission, which is something we could think about doing in the future, because Rinpoche didn't do that. That aside, we're at a funny place, you know. If you learn to do the practice in Tibetan, then when you go to almost any of the Karmakagyu monasteries throughout Asia, many of the other Karmakagyu Dharma centers here in the States, or Europe, or Canada, or Taiwan, the East, many of them do this practice, and they're not going to do it in English. So learning it in Tibetan allows you to participate in other venues where it's done in Tibetan. Also, when you do it in Tibetan, it's kind of beautiful. There are different melodies. There's a rhythm and a cadence, both to the liturgy that's recited as well as the 21 praises. So it's really easy to do as a group, and it feels like it sort of propels itself along because of the rhythm and the tunes. However, everything that you recite is meant to clue you into what you're supposed to be doing at that point in the practice, right? If you understand Tibetan, it's telling you what you're visualizing and who's in the sky in front of you, etc. What wishes are you asking for at that part of the practice? So if we only did it in Tibetan without understanding of the meaning of that which we were reciting, that doesn't seem so good, right? So we're kind of stuck in between for now. Now there are FPMT, Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. Yeah, they're Maitripa, right? They have a version where they've translated it to be sung in the same melody that the praises are traditionally recited in. I don't know about the rest of the text. The rest of the text are just the 21 praises.
It's the whole text.
It's the whole text. To rhythm. Wow. So this is beginning. And it's important. It should happen. It needs to happen. But it's going to take time. You know, we're still infants at this, you know. So both are good, I think. You know, if you were just doing it in Tibetan and not understanding the meaning, that leaves a lot to be desired. But the singability adds a very inspiring component. So I think, and these days, a lot of teachers will say you should work with it in both, you know. Learn to do it in the Tibet. There are blessings they will also say, you know, in reading the words of Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Tai and the words that Bokar Rinpoche and Khenpo Rinpoche and all these masters recited in now. And some of the things, frankly, aren't quite translatable. There are so many meanings. There's such a range of meanings to certain terms that you have to choose one. You can't put them all in the English, but by having to choose, you eliminate the possibility of understanding it in a way that it is understood in its native language. So it's a tricky thing, but I think we are moving in the direction of translating things, even to melody, but it's going to take time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that same thought that you just spoke about, I was wondering about the word Bhagavati, and if that is translatable.
It's Chomdende in Tibetan. Chom means conquered.
Oh.
Conquered what? Conquered the afflictions. Yeah. Den means possessing or endowed. So not endowed, because endowed means it was given to you, but inherently possessing all of the positive qualities. And de means transcendent. So oftentimes it's translated as transcendent conqueror.
Oh.
Here maybe transcendent conqueress, but that leaves out the den. You know, the de. Chom dende, chom, conquer. Den, possessing. That's left out of that translation. But that's sort of the best people. That's the most common thing you'll see for it these days.
And one more word, that I'm going to ask about tonight, was trilocosm.
This is talking about, it's oftentimes mistranslated as like the 3,000 world system. In Tibetan, it's Tong Sum. Tong means 1,000, Sum means 3. So some people misread it as 3,000, but it's actually 1,000 to the third power. So it actually comes down to 1 billion. I think it's 1 billion. Anyway, it's talking about just basically in this world system, there are said to be something like that many worlds. It basically means the universe.
The word atom that's in this,
Yeah.
from whence this originated, is that the same word that we're familiar with?
This is very impressive, actually. In Tibetan, it's dul, which means like, it's like this partless particle.
Right.
There are these, there's a lot of discussion in Buddhism about relative truth and ultimate truth. What constitutes the relative truth and what constitutes the ultimate truth? There's one school, the Vaibhashikas, who say that this table, this microphone, this bell, these are all relative phenomena because these are just assemblies of something that is more fundamental and more real. What's real, what the ultimate reality is this inseparable particle, this partless particle. That's real. All this other stuff is just, this comes and goes. It gets smashed. But what never gets smashed is this partless particle, this dul, this atom. So way back when, I don't know if it's 2,000, at least nearly 2,000 years ago, in ancient India, they had this philosophy of the atom, which didn't arise in Western science until hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later. Kind of cool.
Very.
In the green booklet on page 17, line 2, it says, the translation says homage to Tara, the Ture Huron, but it looks like it's supposed to be Tare Huron. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, just wanted to have that where people could correct their text.
Yeah, very good. That small caps should be Tare. Very good eye, Corey. Page 17, we can make a note of it somewhere and hang it maybe. That should be, the small cap should be the Tare heroine. Last call.
Thank you, Lama Eric. And I continue to struggle with these kinds of practices with the mind that makes us saint an external saint out of Chenrezig, Tara, the Medicine Buddha. What do you do with that? I mean, I see it, but it has this, all the words have sort of a sense, except the final dissolution and the coming and going and appearing and the made of light's all quite helpful. But it can seem like there's some external force that's going to save us from danger.
There are a couple ways to look at it, actually. How would you contrast that, like these images of Chenrezig or Tara or whatever, this external thing to save you, which doesn't seem right in some way? How would you contrast that with the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha? Like, he is also the seeming external force that's kind of there to save you.
Are you asking what's the difference in my mind about
I'm saying,
those?
does there seem to be a problem that we relate to Shakyamuni Buddha as this sort of external thing that can help save us?
Well, no, it's not there. And that's interesting. Well, that was a historical figure who actually lived and then went through all these practices, and through the practices became an awakened being. Mm-hmm. Now, I have heard stories about Tara from some teachers. She was a human. Yeah. And through practices then can emanate this pure wisdom, pure compassion. But I kind of forget that when we're doing it. It's like somehow the prayers are like calling out to, as though it's something external. And I need to always remind myself, there's no external, internal going on here. But the habit of mind,
in a sense.
Well, yeah, help me with that.
So first, the easy way, the easy answer is Chenrezig, Tara, they are spoken about as like when you, for people who have done the preliminary practices, the Ngundro practices, right? We visualize in the sky in front of us these three jewels and 3 roots, right? Tara and Chenrezig are there. Where are they? Do you remember? Are they with the Yidams? Anyone? Are they with the Yidams or the Bodhisattvas? Or the Sangha? They're with the Sangha. They're with the Sangha because they're considered bodhisattvas. They're considered to be figures who in the past gave rise to the mind of awakening, practiced over eons, and gave rise to awakening all that time, all that while accumulating all of that merit, having made very particular aspirations and vows, like what do they want to come about? When they finally attain awakening, what do they want their Buddha activity to be?
It's total Mahayana, the enlightenment for the sake of all beings.
But not only that, so that's right, like that's what they would have said in their dedication prayer.
Right.
We have dedication prayers and aspiration prayers. Mm-hmm. The dedication is we do want all of our merit to go to this ultimate goal, the awakening of all sentient beings. Our aspiration prayers are kind of like more specific, like Khenpo Rinpoche spoke about when he was talking about the Bardo teachings, Amitabha. Amitabha was also a historical being who over lifetimes and lifetimes and eons of accumulating merit, he always dedicated it to the awakening of all being, but his aspiration prayer was, may I be able, through my merit, to create a place where beings can come. I see how hard it is for them in samsara. They can't get into these other pure realms which exist. I want to make a place where it's easy for beings to come, to be able to practice without obstacle, so that they will attain awakening. And because he made that prayer again and again, buttressed by his accumulation of merit, that came true. So it's kind of like someone in this world who's really rich and says, and has a degree of power. I'm going to create this place where anybody can come and practice for free. They don't have to worry about money or food or clothing. I'm inviting all the best teachers. They're actually going to live in this place. And I'm going to do all these things that are going to make it just the most conducive place for practice. That's what Amitabha did, the exact same thing. It just has a more refined manifestation. So in one sense, you can think of Tara as being this Bodhisattva Yeshedawa, wisdom moon, who was born and generated bodhicitta, vowed to always come into the world in the form of a woman. She was chastised, right? Saying, oh, you've gathered so much merit, you should now make aspirations to come back as a man so you can really practice the Dharma. And she's like, no, you idiot, you know? You have no understanding of the Dharma. And just to show you, so to speak, doesn't exactly unfold like that. She made that aspiration. So this is a bodhisattva, Tara as the bodhisattva, who has accumulated a lot of merit and has the ability to influence. The Tibetans will say has the ability to save. They talk about it very just sort of matter of fact like that, and there are a lot of stories. People calling out to Tara because of their accumulation, connection to Tara, and genuine supplication. There are so many stories of being saved from the 8 and the 16 perils or dangers or fears, you know, physically saved. Physically saved.
So there is an external aspect.
Yeah, someone who is an advanced being, a bodhisattva, because of the power of their accumulation of merit, they have the ability to affect things. And through your connection to them, that makes it possible for you to receive that aid, that help, those blessings. That's one way of looking at it.
Okay, and that's all on the relative level, of course.
And so what I was getting to, what's different than Buddha Shakyamuni in that sense, right?
Nothing.
In a sense.
Yeah.
In another sense, we can say, like I alluded to, like it says in the text, the ultimate nature of Tara, or any of these yidams, is nothing but the realized nature of mind. The reason, but we all know that there's a realized nature of mind, right? The problem is, how do we make a connection with it? How do we interact with it? How do we draw it forth? How do we realize it? So we say that the skillful means of the Vajrayana, one of the principal skillful means of the Vajrayana is working with what we call yidams, where the ultimate nature of mind manifests in a form with which we can have a relationship. We can develop a relationship. And through developing that relationship, visualizing ourselves in that very form, not like we say the sutra vehicle is accumulating all these causes for enlightenment so that one day we'll be able to, you know, act like a Buddha, accumulating all these causes. In the Vajrayana, we say we don't take causes as the path, we take the fruit as the path. What does that mean? That means from close to the very beginning, okay, I am awakened. This is an awakened form. I'm going to engage in Buddha activity, light radiating out and purifying beings of their negative actions. And through this enhanced technique, it brings about the awakening sooner, it is said. So we can relate to, but now there's this whole play of like this interaction, this relationship we have to have. So we are sort of creating this dualistic world, but this dualistic world is like sticks we're putting onto the fire, making this fire blaze brighter, this fire of wisdom blaze brighter. And then when the time comes and we don't need those sticks anymore to make the fire blaze any brighter, the fire itself will consume those sticks of skillful means. We use the sense of duality to undermine the sense of duality. It is good, isn't it?
Are you going to do a sequel to this?
The sequels are never as good as the original.
Is this streamed for archiving?
I believe so. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the best way to learn is just to start. You know, you have questions and it's not clear, but you just need to start. If you have an interest, just start coming, Read it while you're at home. Go over the outline. Come listen to the puja. Listen to the recording. It's not as intimidating as it no doubt feels right now. Is there anything else? Should probably let you all go. So let's do the dedication, and actually, we're going to do 3 things. 3 whole things. And we're going to have to set it up in our text first. Okay. First, turn to page. Oh, I can look at my handy thing. 31. So we'll recite the aspiration prayer and the prayer of auspiciousness, both of which are contained on page 31. And then look in the back of your text where you see the Chinrezi, the long life prayers. So this last group of pages in your text, turn to page 48 and just pull that off to the side. We're going to turn to page 48 after we recite the dedication and Tashi prayer. Because today is His Holiness Karmapa's birthday. So we'll recite his the long life prayer for him. Once in Tibetan, then once in English, then once in Tibetan again. Okay, so first, page 31. Oh, by this virtue may I quickly accomplish the noble Tara, and then establish all beings without exception in a state, like a wish-fulfilling jewel and an excellent vase. You grant the fulfillment of all our wishes without hindrance. May we be inseparable from the Venerable Tara, the victors and their heirs, and may there be auspiciousness of their compassionate protection. Page 48. O gya kunen jeron zu karma pa, gya kun trin le che de karma pa, gya kun don so wan ko karma pa. Let's do it 3 times in Tibetan, then once in English. Gya kunin jerang zu karma pa, gya kun tre le che de karma pa, gya kun don so wan ko karma pa, o gendro de tre le shabden so, gya kunin jerang zu karma pa, gya kun tre le chek de karma pa, gya kun don so wan ko karma pa, o gendro de tre le shabden so. Karmapa, embodiment of the compassion of all the Buddhas, Karmapa, union of the awakened activity of all the Buddhas. Karmapa, empowered as regent of all the Buddhas. Organ Jodo Trinle, may your life be long. You're very welcome.